The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. Yi-sun Kang sat alone in complete darkness. The only light in the penthouse came from the Manhattan skyline glowing through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. 60 floors below, New York City buzzed with life. Yellow taxis crawled through streets. Couples walked hand in hand toward late-night restaurants. College students stumbled out of bars in the meatpacking district. But up here, in this $15 million penthouse, everything was silent. Yi-sun sat on a black leather couch with his legs spread wide and his elbows resting on his knees. A cigarette burned between his fingers. Smoke curled up toward the ceiling and disappeared into the shadows. He wore an all-black shirt, unbuttoned halfway down his chest, revealing intricate tattoos that covered his skin like armor. Each tattoo told a story. Each one represented something he survived. He checked his Patek Philippe watch for the 5th time in 20 minutes. 11:48 p.m. Where was she? He took a long drag of his cigarette and let the smoke fill his lungs. His jaw was tight. His eyes were fixed on the front door like a predator waiting for prey to walk into a trap. Yi-sun Kang was not a patient man. He ran the Kang Syndicate, the most powerful Korean crime organization on the entire East Coast. His operations stretched from New York to Atlanta to Miami. He controlled everything from underground gambling rings to real estate development to import businesses that moved products the government preferred not to know about. Men feared him, women wanted him, everyone respected him. But right now, the most dangerous man in New York was sitting in the dark, checking his watch, waiting for his housekeeper to come home. And that fact made him angrier than anything else. The elevator dinged. Yi-sun's entire body tensed. He crushed the cigarette into the crystal ashtray on the table beside him and leaned back into the couch. He did not move. He did not speak. He just watched. The front door opened. Nadia Brooks walked in wearing a tan blazer over a black top and fitted black pants. She looked professional, polished, like she had just come from a business meeting. Her natural hair was pulled back in a sleek low bun. Her skin glowed even in the dim light. She was carrying a leather bag over her shoulder and looking down at her phone as she stepped inside. She did not see him at first. She took 3 steps into the penthouse before she felt it. That heavy feeling in the air. That electricity that always seemed to crackle whenever he was near. Nadia looked up. Her entire body froze. Yi-sun sat in the shadows like a statue carved from stone. The city lights behind him created a silhouette that made him look even more intimidating than usual. His dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. Coming home at this hour? His voice cut through the silence like a blade, cold, controlled. But underneath the calm there was something else, something that sounded almost like pain. Nadia's heart slammed against her ribs. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Yi-sun slowly rose from the couch. He was tall, over 6 feet, and when he stood, he seemed to fill the entire room. He took 1 step toward her, then another. Each footstep echoed in the silent penthouse like a countdown to something explosive. I asked you a question, Nadia. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. Where were you? Okay, before we continue, I need you to do something real quick. If you are watching this right now and you have not subscribed to this channel, I need you to ask yourself a serious question. Why? Why are you sitting here, about to watch one of the most intense love stories I have ever told, and you are not even part of the family yet? Do you know how much work goes into these stories? The research, the writing, the editing, and you are just going to watch without subscribing. That hurts. That really hurts. So here is what I need you to do right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me which city you are watching from. I read every single comment, every single one. I want to know where my people are at. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Houston, LA, London, Lagos, wherever you are, let me know. Do it right now. I will wait. Okay. Now let us get back into this story because it is about to get crazy. To understand why Yi-sun Kang was sitting in the dark waiting for his housekeeper like a jealous husband, we need to go back to the beginning. 3 months earlier. Nadia Brooks was broke, not just regular broke. The kind of broke where you check your bank account and laugh because crying would take too much energy. The kind of broke where you have to choose between buying groceries and keeping your phone on. The kind of broke that makes you do things you never thought you would do. She was 27 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood where people learned early that the world was not designed to be fair. Her mother, Gloria Brooks, worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Her mother cleaned houses during the day and worked as a nursing assistant at night. She sacrificed everything so Nadia could have opportunities she never had. And Nadia almost made it. She got a full scholarship to Columbia University in New York. She graduated with honors. Then she got accepted into Columbia Business School with a partial scholarship. She was on track to become something, to be somebody, to make her mother proud. Then her mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Nadia dropped everything and flew back to Chicago. She spent the next 8 months by her mother's side, watching the strongest woman she ever knew fade away. The medical bills piled up. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Nadia burned through her savings. Then she took out loans. Then she maxed out credit cards. By the time Gloria Brooks took her last breath, Nadia had nothing left. She returned to New York broken in every way a person could be broken. She had no money, no job. She had missed too many classes to continue at Columbia without paying out of pocket. And paying out of pocket was a joke. She could barely afford to eat. She crashed on a friend's couch in Brooklyn for 2 months while she figured out her next move. She applied for jobs everywhere, corporate positions, retail jobs, anything. But New York was expensive and opportunities were slim for a woman with an incomplete graduate degree and a gap on her resume. Then she saw the job listing. Seeking live-in housekeeper for private residence in Manhattan, $15,000 per month, room and board included, discretion required, no social media posts about employer, no visitors, no questions about employer's business, serious inquiries only. $15,000 a month. That was more than some people made in 3 months. It was enough to pay off her debts, enough to save money, enough to eventually go back to school. Nadia knew the posting sounded suspicious. Normal rich people did not pay that much for a housekeeper. Normal rich people did not require that level of secrecy. But Nadia was desperate, and desperate people do not have the luxury of asking too many questions. She applied. 2 days later, she received a response asking her to come to an address on the Upper East Side for an interview. The interview was conducted by a Korean man in his mid-30s named Dorian Woo. He was handsome in a cold sort of way, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to analyze everything. He asked Nadia standard questions about her background, her experience, and her ability to maintain confidentiality. Then he asked her a question that should have made her run. Are you comfortable working for someone who operates outside the traditional boundaries of the law? Nadia should have said no. She should have stood up and walked out, but she thought about her mother's medical bills. She thought about the debt collectors calling her phone. She thought about the fact that she had exactly $47 in her bank account. Yes, she said, I am comfortable. Dorian smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. Good, you start Monday. On her first day at the penthouse, Nadia met her employer. Yi-sun Kang was not what she expected. She had imagined an older man, someone overweight with a cigar and a sleazy smile, someone who would look at her like she was a piece of meat. Instead, she found herself face to face with one of the most attractive men she had ever seen. He was 32 years old with a face that looked like it was sculpted by someone who understood symmetry on a molecular level. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, full lips set in a permanent expression of quiet intensity. His black hair was pushed back from his forehead, and his dark eyes held the kind of depth that made you feel like he could see through you. But it was not just his face that commanded attention. It was his presence. When Yi-sun walked into a room, the air changed. People straightened their spines. Conversations stopped. Everyone waited to see what he would do or say next. Nadia felt all of this within the first 30 seconds of meeting him. He barely looked at her during the introduction. Dorian explained her duties while Yi-sun stood by the window, staring out at the city like it belonged to him, because in many ways it did. The only time Yi-sun acknowledged her directly was at the very end. He turned from the window and fixed those dark eyes on her face. "One rule," he said. His voice was deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent that made certain words sound like music. "Do not enter my office, ever, for any reason. Understood?" Nadia nodded quickly. Understood. He looked at her for a moment longer. Something flickered in his eyes, something she could not identify. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing down a hallway without another word. For the first month, Nadia barely saw Yisun. She woke up early every morning and cleaned the penthouse from top to bottom. She organized his closets, which were filled with custom suits that probably cost more than her mother's annual salary. She prepared meals that he rarely ate. She did laundry, changed sheets, and made sure everything was perfect. She followed every rule. She stayed invisible. But she noticed things. She noticed that Yisun never seemed to sleep. She would wake up at 3 a.m. to get water, and she would see the light on in his office. She noticed that he had very few visitors. Dorian came by frequently, along with a rotation of serious-looking men who never smiled. She noticed that he kept a gun in a drawer beside his bed, and another in the kitchen, and another by the front door. She noticed the scars on his body, thin white lines on his arms, a jagged mark on his side that looked like it came from a knife, and the tattoos on his chest that seemed to cover something he did not want the world to see. Most importantly, she noticed how he started looking at her. It began in the second month, small things at first. He started coming home earlier on nights when she was cooking. He would sit at the kitchen island and watch her move around the space. He never said much, just watched, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Then the gifts started appearing. A designer bag on her bed, a jewelry box containing diamond earrings, a brand new MacBook with a note that said, "For your studies." He knew she had dropped out of school. He knew everything about her. Of course he did. Nadia returned every single gift. She would leave them outside his office door with a polite note thanking him but declining. She did not want to owe him anything. She did not want to blur the lines of their professional relationship. This seemed to frustrate Yisun in a way she did not understand. He never mentioned the returned gifts directly, but she would catch him staring at her with an expression that looked almost like confusion, like she was breaking rules he did not even know he had established. By the third month, Nadia knew she was in trouble, because somewhere along the way, she had stopped seeing him as her dangerous employer. She had started seeing him as a man, a lonely, broken, complicated man who sat in the dark waiting for her to come home. And that was the night everything changed. Back in the present moment, Nadia stood frozen by the front door as Yisun approached her. Each step he took seemed to make the massive penthouse feel smaller. The city lights at his back created an outline around his body that made him look like something out of a dark fairy tale. She found her voice somewhere in the chaos of her racing heart. "Where I go on my personal time is none of your business." Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "I work for you. I am not your prisoner." Yisun stopped walking. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, dark, intoxicating. He tilted his head slightly, and a smile that held no warmth crossed his lips. "Do you think I do not know you have been leaving this penthouse every Wednesday and Friday night for the past month?" He asked the question calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "Do you think I do not have people watching you?" Nadia felt the blood drain from her face. "You have been following me. I have been protecting you. By spying on me." Yisun's jaw tightened. "By making sure no one hurts what belongs to me." The words hung in the air between them. What belongs to me? Nadia should have been offended. She should have reminded him that she was a human being, not property. She should have told him that he had no right to claim ownership over her. But there was something in his voice when he said it, something raw and vulnerable underneath all that danger, something that made her heart do things it had no business doing. "I do not belong to you," she said quietly. Yisun stepped closer, so close that if she leaned forward, their lips would touch. "Then, why do you make me feel like I would burn the world down if anyone ever took you away from me?" Nadia could not breathe. She could not think. She could only stare into those dark eyes and see her own reflection staring back. "You are jealous," she whispered. "You are sitting in the dark, waiting for me like a jealous husband, because you think I have been seeing another man." Yisun did not deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. Nadia should not have felt the warmth that spread through her chest at this revelation. She should not have felt anything except concern that her employer was clearly unstable. But she had spent 3 months watching this man, 3 months learning his patterns, 3 months wondering what was going on behind those impenetrable eyes. And now she knew. He wanted her. He cared about her, maybe more than even he understood. "I have been going to school," she said softly. Yi-sun's eyebrows drew together. "What?" Nadia reached into her bag and pulled out a textbook, Principles of Financial Management. She held it up so he could see the cover. "There is a community college in Queens that offers night classes. I have been taking courses to finish my business degree. That is where I go on Wednesday and Friday nights. To class." She watched the emotions play across his face. Confusion first, then understanding, then something that looked like relief, then shame. "You thought I was seeing someone else," Nadia continued. "You have been sitting here for God knows how long, smoking cigarettes and driving yourself crazy imagining me with another man. And I was in Queens learning about stock valuations." Yi-sun stepped back. For the first time since she met him, he looked uncertain, off balance, human. "Why did you not tell me?" His voice was rough. "I would have paid for you to return to Colombia. I would have given you anything you needed." Nadia shook her head. "That is exactly why I did not tell you. I do not want your charity. I do not want to owe you anything more than I already do." "You owe me nothing. I live in your home. I eat your food. I wear clothes bought with your money. I owe you everything." Yi-sun's expression darkened. "Those are not debts. Those are things I give you because I want to." "But why?" Nadia's voice cracked. "Why do you care so much? I am just your housekeeper." He moved faster than she expected. One moment there was space between them. The next, he had her pressed against the door with his hand flat on the surface beside her head. His body was inches from hers. His breath was warm on her face. "You stopped being just anything to me a long time ago," he said. "You made me feel something I swore I would never feel again. You made me weak, Nadia, and I do not know whether to thank you or hate you for it." Before she could respond, his phone rang. The sound was jarring, like an alarm pulling them both out of a dream. Yi-sun's jaw clenched. He reached into his pocket and looked at the screen. She saw the name flash, Dorian. He answered with a sharp, "What?" Nadia could not hear what Dorian said, but she watched Yi-sun's expression change. The heat in his eyes disappeared. The vulnerability vanished. In its place was the cold, calculating look of the Mafia boss she had first met 3 months ago. "Where?" he asked. "Then how many? Then I am on my way." He hung up and stepped away from her. The distance felt like a physical loss. "There has been an attack on one of our warehouses in Brooklyn," he said. His voice was all business now. "I have to go." Nadia nodded. She did not ask questions. She knew better by now. Yi-sun walked toward the door, then stopped. He turned back to look at her one more time. His eyes swept over her face like he was memorizing every detail. "This conversation is not over," he said. "When I get back, we are going to finish what we started here." Then he was gone. Nadia slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor. Her legs would not hold her anymore. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She replayed his words in her head. "You made me feel something I swore I would never feel again." What did that mean? What had happened to him before? And more importantly, what was going to happen when he came back? Yi-sun did not come home that night, or the next morning. Nadia went through the motions of her daily routine. She cleaned the penthouse. She prepared food that sat untouched in the refrigerator. She tried to focus on her textbooks, but the words blurred together on the page. She told herself she was not worried about him. He was a grown man, a dangerous man. He could take care of himself. But every time she heard a sound in the hallway, her heart jumped. Every time her phone buzzed, she grabbed it hoping to see his name. It was pathetic, really. 3 months ago, she had been terrified of him. Now she could not stop thinking about the way he looked at her, the way he touched her face, the way his voice sounded when he called her by her name. Around noon on the second day, Nadia heard voices coming from Yi-sun's office. The door was cracked open slightly. She knew she should not eavesdrop. She knew it was dangerous. She listened anyway. 2 men were talking inside. One voice she recognized as Dorian. The other belonged to a man she had seen around the penthouse before, one of Yi Sun's lieutenants. She thought his name was Vincent. "He is getting soft," Dorian said. His voice was cold, dismissive. "Ever since that woman moved in, he has lost focus." "You cannot blame him for wanting some company," Vincent replied. "He has been alone for 5 years, since Yuna." Nadia's ears perked up at the unfamiliar name. Yuna? Who was Yuna? Dorian laughed bitterly. "Do not speak that name in this house. You know what she did to him." "I know. I was there. I saw what she almost cost us." There was a pause. Nadia pressed closer to the door, straining to hear. "Yuna was supposed to be his wife," Dorian continued. "The daughter of the Park family in Los Angeles. The marriage was going to unite the two most powerful Korean organizations on the West Coast and the East Coast. It would have made us untouchable. But she betrayed him. She was working with the Italians in Chicago. She fed them information for months, routes, schedules, safe house locations. She was going to have him killed on their wedding night." Nadia's hand flew to her mouth. She pressed her back against the wall, her heart racing. "He found out the night before the ceremony," Dorian said, "but not before her people tried to take him out. He almost died that night. You have seen the scars." Vincent's voice was quiet. "The ones on his chest, the ones he covers with tattoos. He does not cover them because he is ashamed. He covers them because he does not want to remember. Yuna almost destroyed him, not just his body, his mind, his ability to trust. He swore he would never let another woman close to him again. And now there is Nadia." Dorian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was strange, almost resentful. "And now there is Nadia." Nadia backed away from the door. Her legs were shaking. Her mind was spinning with everything she had just learned. Yi Sun had been engaged. His fiancée had tried to kill him. She had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and he had been carrying that trauma for 5 years. No wonder he built walls around himself. No wonder he pushed people away. No wonder he looked at Nadia sometimes like he was terrified of what he felt. She finally understood, and understanding made everything more complicated. That evening, Yi Sun came home. Nadia heard the front door open around 8 p.m. She was in the kitchen, pretending to cook even though her appetite had disappeared hours ago. When she turned around, her heart stopped. Yi Sun looked like hell. His shirt was torn. There was blood on his collar. A cut on his cheek was still oozing slightly. He walked into the penthouse like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Oh my God." Nadia dropped the spatula and rushed toward him. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Yi Sun waved his hand dismissively. "It is nothing, just a scratch." "That is not a scratch." She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the bathroom. "Sit down, let me clean it." He could have resisted. He was bigger and stronger and fully capable of taking care of himself, but he let her lead him. He sat on the edge of the bathroom counter and watched her gather first aid supplies with quiet eyes. Nadia worked in silence at first. She cleaned the cut on his cheek with antiseptic wipes. She applied butterfly bandages to hold the skin together. Her touch was gentle, but her hands were shaking slightly. "You learned this from your mother," Yi Sun said quietly. It was not a question. Nadia nodded. "She was a nursing assistant. She taught me basic first aid when I was a teenager. Said every woman should know how to take care of herself and others." "She sounds like a smart woman." "She was the smartest woman I ever knew." Silence stretched between them. Nadia finished cleaning his wounds and started putting away the supplies. She was hyper-aware of how close they were, how his knee was almost touching her hip, how he was looking at her like she was something precious. "Nadia." She stopped moving. "Yes." "Why do you take care of me like this?" The question caught her off guard. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something vulnerable behind his eyes, something he usually kept hidden. "Because I care about you," she said honestly, "even though I probably should not." His eyebrows drew together. "Why should you not?" "Because you are dangerous, because you are my employer, because we come from completely different worlds." She paused. "Because I overheard Dorian talking about Yuna." Yi Sun went very still. His expression closed off. The walls started coming back up. "You were listening to private conversations." The door was open. I was not trying to spy. She took a breath. But I heard everything, about your engagement, about the betrayal, about what she did to you. For a long moment, Yi-sun said nothing. He stared at the floor with a jaw so tight she thought his teeth might crack. Now you know, he finally said. Now you understand why I am the way I am. Broken, untrusting, incapable of letting anyone close. Nadia stepped between his legs. She cupped his face in her hands and forced him to look at her. His eyes widened slightly at her boldness. I do not see a broken man, she said softly. I see a man who was hurt, a man who has been protecting himself for 5 years, a man who deserves to be loved properly. Something shifted in Yi-sun's expression. The walls crumbled, just a little bit. He reached up and covered her hands with his own. You should be afraid of me, he whispered. Everyone else is. I am not everyone else. He pulled her closer. His thumb traced her lower lip. His forehead rested against hers. She could feel his breath on her skin, could feel the heat radiating from his body. If I let myself have you, he said, I will not be able to let you go. I will become obsessed, possessive, dangerous. I will destroy anyone who tries to take you from me. Nadia should have been scared. Any sane woman would have been. Instead, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was soft at first, questioning, like he was asking permission. But when she opened her mouth to him, something inside him broke free. He pulled her onto his lap and kissed her like a drowning man gasping for air. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers with desperate urgency. For a few perfect minutes, nothing existed except the two of them. Then his phone rang. Yi-sun pulled back with a growl of frustration. He looked at the screen, and his expression changed immediately. Cold focus replaced the heat in his eyes. What? He answered sharply. Nadia could not hear the other end of the conversation, but she watched his face go pale, watched his jaw clench, watched something dark and terrible flash in his eyes. Are you certain? He asked. Then do not let anyone leave. I want answers. He hung up and looked at Nadia. The softness was gone. In its place was the calculating gaze of the Mafia boss who controlled half the East Coast. There is a traitor in my organization, he said. Someone has been leaking information to our enemies. Nadia felt ice form in her stomach. Do they know who? Yi-sun's expression was unreadable. They think they do. Who? He stared at her for a long moment. Something painful flickered in his eyes. You. The word hung in the air between them like a blade. You. Nadia stepped back, her hands were shaking. What? Yi-sun's face was a mask, completely unreadable. Dorian found evidence. Encrypted messages traced to a phone in your room, money transfers to an account linked to your name. It all points to you. That is impossible. Nadia's voice was rising. I have never sent any encrypted messages. I do not even know how to do that. And what account? I barely have enough money to buy groceries. Yi-sun said nothing. He just watched her with those dark, calculating eyes. You cannot possibly believe this. Nadia felt tears burning behind her eyes. After everything we just shared, after what just happened between us, you think I am capable of betraying you. Still, he said nothing. The silence was worse than any accusation. It was confirmation of everything she feared. He did not trust her. He could not trust her. 5 years of trauma had made it impossible. Fine. Nadia straightened her spine. She would not let him see her break. If you think I am a traitor, then fire me, call your people, have me arrested. Do whatever you are going to do. Yi-sun's jaw tightened. I did not say I believed it. You did not say you did not believe it either. The evidence is compelling. Evidence can be fabricated. Nadia took a step toward him. Someone is setting me up. Someone who has access to this penthouse. Someone who knows how to plant messages and create fake accounts. Someone who wants you to push me away. Yi-sun's eyes narrowed. She could see him processing her words. See him considering the possibility that she was right. Why would anyone do that? He asked slowly. Because they know you care about me. Nadia's voice was fierce now. Because they see me as a threat. Because as long as I am here, you are distracted, vulnerable, human, and maybe someone does not want you to be any of those things. Something flickered in Yi-sun's expression. Doubt. Not in her, but in the evidence against her. "I need time," he said finally. "I need to investigate this properly. And in the meantime, am I your prisoner? You are under my protection." His voice was firm. "Until I know who the real traitor is, no one touches you, no one questions you, no one looks at you wrong." It was not an exoneration, but it was not a condemnation either. It was a middle ground that Nadia would have to accept for now. "Fine," she said, "but I am telling you right now, Yi-sun, I would never betray you. I came to this penthouse with nothing except my integrity. That is the one thing I will not let anyone take from me." Yi-sun stepped close to her. He cupped her face in his hands and looked into her eyes with an intensity that made her soul shake. "I want to believe you," he whispered, "more than I have ever wanted anything." "Then believe me." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I am trying." For the next 3 days, Nadia lived in a strange limbo. Yi-sun came and went at odd hours, clearly investigating the leak. He barely spoke to her. When their paths crossed, he looked at her with a mixture of longing and suspicion that broke her heart. Dorian was around more often. He watched Nadia with cold eyes whenever she moved through the penthouse. He never said anything directly threatening, but the hostility radiating off him was impossible to miss. Nadia knew she had to clear her name. If she waited for Yi-sun to do it, she might wait forever. His trauma made it almost impossible for him to trust. He needed proof. He needed evidence so overwhelming that even his damaged heart could not deny it. On the third night, Nadia made a decision. She waited until the penthouse was quiet, until Yi-sun was gone and Dorian had left for the evening. Then she crept toward the one place she was never supposed to go. Yi-sun's office. Her heart was pounding as she turned the handle. The door was locked, but she had watched Yi-sun enter the code dozens of times. 0427. His mother's birthday, she had learned from overhearing a conversation. The door clicked open. Nadia slipped inside and closed the door behind her. The office was dark except for the glow of the city outside the windows. She moved quickly, going straight to the computer on the massive desk. She needed to find the evidence Dorian claimed to have. She needed to examine the encrypted messages and the bank transfers. If she could prove they were sent at times when she had alibis, she could prove she was framed. The computer required a password. She tried several combinations before finally trying 0427 again. It worked. She navigated to the files Dorian had presented as evidence. Her hands were trembling as she clicked through document after document. Financial records, communication logs, transaction histories. Then she found it. The encrypted messages that supposedly came from her phone were time-stamped. She looked at the dates and times carefully. Wednesday at 7:32 p.m., Friday at 8:15 p.m., Wednesday at 6:45 p.m. Nadia almost laughed out loud. Those were exactly the times she was sitting in class in Queens. She had attendance records. She had signed rosters from the professor. She had time-stamped assignments submitted through the college's online portal. She was not the traitor. She could not possibly be. The evidence proved it. But before she could celebrate, the office door swung open. Nadia spun around, her heart in her throat. Dorian stood in the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold, and in his right hand he held a gun. "I warned Yi-sun that you were clever," Dorian said softly. "I told him you would try something like this." Nadia's blood ran cold. "It is you. You are the traitor." Dorian smiled. It was an ugly expression that did not reach his eyes. "Smart girl, too smart for your own good." Dorian stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. The click of the lock sounded like a death sentence. "How long have you been selling information?" Nadia asked. Her voice was steadier than she felt. 3 years. Dorian circled around the desk slowly, keeping the gun trained on her. "The Morty family in Philadelphia approached me after Yi-sun rejected their alliance proposal. They offered me money, power, a seat at their table when they finally take over the East Coast. Yi-sun trusted you. He thought of you as a brother." Dorian laughed bitterly. "A brother? I have worked for the Kang family for 15 years. I was supposed to take over when Yi-sun's father retired. But then the old man died and his precious son inherited everything. I was pushed aside, made into an errand boy, a second-in-command who would never command anything. Nadia's mind was racing. She needed to keep him talking, needed to find a way out of this. So you decided to destroy everything he built. I decided to take what I deserve. Dorian's eyes were wild now. And you almost ruined it. You made him soft, distracted. He started questioning my decisions, started looking at me differently, because of you. That is not my fault. No, but you are very useful. He grabbed her arm roughly. Yi-sun cares about you. God knows why, but he does. That makes you leverage. Nadia tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. He will kill you for this. He will have to find me first. Dorian started dragging her toward the door. By the time he realizes what happened, you and I will be in Philadelphia, and the Morty family will have everything they need to destroy the Kang syndicate from the inside. Panic surged through Nadia's body. She could not let him take her. She could not let him use her as a weapon against Yi-sun. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, words spoken years ago in their tiny apartment in Chicago. If a man ever puts his hands on you, go for the eyes, the throat, the groin. Fight dirty, baby. Fight to survive. Nadia stopped resisting. She let her body go limp. Dorian loosened his grip slightly, adjusting his hold. That was his mistake. Nadia spun and drove her elbow into his throat with every ounce of strength she possessed. Dorian gasped and stumbled backward. The gun clattered to the floor. Nadia ran. She sprinted out of the office and down the hallway toward Yi-sun's bedroom. It was the only room with a reinforced door, the only place she could lock herself in and call for help. She could hear Dorian cursing behind her, hear his footsteps pounding against the marble floor. She made it to the bedroom with seconds to spare. She slammed the door and engaged the electronic lock just as Dorian crashed against it from the other side. You cannot hide forever, he shouted through the door. Open this door or I will shoot through it. Nadia ignored him. She grabbed Yi-sun's encrypted phone from the nightstand and typed a message with shaking fingers. Dorian is the traitor. He has a gun. Help. She sent the message and prayed. Yi-sun was in a warehouse in the Bronx when his phone buzzed. He was meeting with his lieutenants, discussing strategy for dealing with the Philadelphia threat. He glanced at the screen, a message from his personal phone, the one he left at home. Nadia. His heart stopped when he read her words. Dorian is the traitor. He has a gun. Help. For one terrible second, the world went silent. Then Yi-sun moved. He was out the door before anyone could react. He jumped into his car and tore through the streets of New York at dangerous speeds. Red lights meant nothing. Speed limits meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was getting to Nadia. He called his security team as he drove. Get to the penthouse. Now. Full tactical response. If anyone has hurt her, I want them alive so I can kill them myself. The drive from the Bronx to Manhattan should have taken 45 minutes. Yi-sun made it in 20. He burst through the penthouse door with his gun drawn and his heart in his throat. 4 of his men flanked him. The scene that greeted them made his blood boil. Dorian was trying to break down the bedroom door. He had abandoned subtlety and was now throwing his entire body against the reinforced barrier. Dorian. Yi-sun's voice was calm, almost conversational, but his eyes were murderous. Dorian spun around. His face went pale when he saw Yi-sun standing there. The gun in Yi-sun's hand was pointed directly at his head. Yi-sun, this is not what it looks like. Really? Yi-sun took a step forward. Because it looks like my trusted second-in-command has been selling me out to the Mortys. It looks like he framed the woman I love for his crimes. It looks like he was trying to kidnap her. Dorian's eyes widened. The woman you love. Yi-sun ignored the question. He kept moving forward, his gun never wavering. 15 years, Dorian. I trusted you with my life, with my family's legacy, with everything. And what did that trust get me? Dorian's fear was turning to anger. Scraps from your table, orders to follow, a lifetime of service with nothing to show for it. You had everything, money, power, respect, but it was never enough for you. I deserved more. You deserved nothing. Yi-sun's voice was cold as ice, and now you will get exactly that. He nodded to his men. They moved forward and grabbed Dorian, disarming him and forcing him to his knees. Dorian looked up at Yi-sun with hatred in his eyes. She has made you weak. The old Yi-sun would have killed me already. The old Yi-sun was dead inside. Yi-sun holstered his gun. Nadia brought me back to life, and for that I will protect her until my last breath. He turned away from Dorian and walked to the bedroom door. He entered the code and opened it slowly. Nadia was standing in the middle of the room, tears streaming down her face. When she saw him, she ran. She threw herself into his arms and he caught her. He held her so tightly he was afraid he might break her, but she held him back just as fiercely. "I am sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I am so sorry I doubted you, even for a second." "Just hold me," she said. "Please just hold me." And he did. The next morning, Nadia woke up in Yi-sun's bed. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in shades of gold. She was alone, but the pillow next to her was still warm. The sheets still smelled like him. She found him in the kitchen, making breakfast. Actually making breakfast. The most dangerous man in New York was standing at the stove, cooking eggs and bacon like a normal person. He turned when he heard her footsteps. His eyes swept over her face like he was checking to make sure she was real, like he was afraid she might disappear. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Safe." She walked over to him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "For the first time in a long time, I feel safe." They ate breakfast together in comfortable silence. Afterward, Yi-sun led her to the couch where this had all begun. They sat facing each other, knees touching. "I need to tell you everything," he said. "About my past, about Yuna, about why I am so damaged." Nadia took his hand. "Only if you want to." He told her everything. The arranged marriage, the betrayal, the assassination attempt on the night before his wedding, the scars on his chest that reminded him every day of how foolish it was to trust. "For 5 years, I told myself I would never love again," he said. "I built walls so high that no one could climb them. I convinced myself that I was better off alone." "What changed?" "You," he reached up and touched her face. "You walked into my life with your second-hand textbooks and your stubborn pride. You refused my gifts. You challenged my authority. You looked at me like I was a person instead of a monster." "You are not a monster, Yi-sun. I have done monstrous things." "That does not define you." Nadia leaned closer. "What defines you is who you choose to be, and you have been choosing to be better ever since I met you." Yi-sun was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke words that changed everything. "Stay with me, not as my housekeeper, as my partner, as the woman I want to build a future with." Nadia's breath caught. "You barely know me." "I know everything about you." His eyes were intense. "I know you take your coffee with 2 sugars. I know you sing under your breath when you think no one is listening. I know you cry when you look at pictures of your mother. I know you are the strongest person I have ever met." "I'm not strong. I'm just surviving." "That is the same thing." He took both her hands in his. "Let me take care of you, not because you need saving, because you deserve someone who will fight for you the way you fight for yourself." Nadia felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I do not know what to say." "Say yes." She looked at this man who had terrified her 3 months ago. This dangerous, damaged, beautiful man who looked at her like she was his entire world. "Yes." Yi-sun kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. "I am going to pay for you to finish your degree at Columbia," he said. "And before you argue, this is not charity. This is an investment." "An investment." "In our future." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, made him look younger, lighter. "I want to watch you graduate. I want to see you become everything you are meant to be." Nadia laughed through her tears. "You are very bossy for someone asking me to be his partner." "I am a Mafia boss. It comes with the territory." 2 weeks of peace. That was all they got before the storm came. Yi-sun's retaliation against Dorian sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The Philadelphia Morty family, now without their inside source, became desperate, and desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. Yi-sun increased security around Nadia. Armed guards followed her everywhere. She could not leave the penthouse without an escort. She could not go to her classes without 2 men in black suits sitting in the back of the room. "I feel like a prisoner," she told Yi-sun one night. I know. His voice was pained. But until the Mortys are dealt with, I cannot take any chances. When will this be over? He did not answer, because he did not know. The attack came on a Tuesday. Yi-sun was in Miami, handling fallout from a nightclub incident that left 3 of his men injured. He had not wanted to leave Nadia, but the situation required his personal attention. I will be back in 2 days, he promised before he left. Stay in the penthouse. Do not open the door for anyone except my security team. Nadia agreed. She spent the first day catching up on schoolwork. She spent the evening cooking dinner for one and pretending she was not lonely. At 11 p.m., the power went out. Nadia froze. The penthouse was plunged into darkness. Only the city lights through the windows provided any visibility. Then she heard it, glass breaking somewhere in the building, footsteps, voices speaking in low tones. The intruders were not subtle. They were professionals, but they did not care about stealth. They knew exactly where Nadia was, and they were coming for her. She ran for the panic room. Yi-sun had shown it to her during her first week. A reinforced room behind his closet with steel walls, its own ventilation system, and communication equipment that could reach him anywhere in the world. She made it inside just as she heard the bedroom door crash open. She sealed the panic room and activated the security monitors. 4 men in black tactical gear swept through the penthouse. They were armed, organized, clearly military trained. One of them spoke into a radio. Target is not in the main living area. Check the bedrooms. Nadia's hands were shaking as she activated the communication system. She dialed Yi-sun's private line. He answered on the first ring. Nadia. They are in the penthouse. Her voice was barely above a whisper. 4 men, they are looking for me. She heard Yi-sun's sharp intake of breath. Then his voice, cold and commanding, speaking to someone nearby. Get the jet ready, now. He came back on the line. Where are you? The panic room. Good, stay there. Do not open that door for anyone except me. Do you understand? How long until you get here? 2 hours. 2 hours, an eternity. Yi-sun, Nadia's voice cracked. If something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you. But if it does, I need you to know something. Nadia, I love you. The words came out in a rush. I love you and I should have said it sooner and I need you to know. There was silence on the line. Then Yi-sun's voice, rough with emotion. I love you too, and nothing is going to happen to you because I am going to tear apart anyone who tries to hurt you. The connection held. Yi-sun stayed on the line with her, talking her through the fear while his jet raced across the sky from Miami to New York. Yi-sun made it to New York in 97 minutes, the fastest his pilot had ever flown. A team of 12 men was waiting for him at the penthouse building. The building's regular security had been neutralized by the intruders, but Yi-sun's private security force was a different matter entirely. They breached the penthouse at exactly 12:43 a.m. The firefight was brief but brutal. The intruders were good, but Yi-sun's men were better. Within 10 minutes, all 4 of them were either dead or incapacitated. Yi-sun did not stop to survey the damage. He ran straight for the panic room. Nadia, it is me. Open the door. The steel door slid open. Nadia stood on the other side, her face tear-streaked and her body trembling. She fell into his arms. Yi-sun held her like she was made of glass. He whispered apologies and promises into her hair. He told her it was over. He told her she was safe. He told her he would never let anyone hurt her again. Then he went to work. The surviving intruders were taken to a secure location for questioning. It did not take long to extract the information Yi-sun needed. The Morty family had ordered the kidnapping. They planned to use Nadia as leverage to force Yi-sun into surrendering his territory. They had made a fatal miscalculation. Over the next 48 hours, Yi-sun dismantled the Morty family's entire operation. Every safe house was raided. Every bank account was frozen. Every alliance was severed. The Morty family patriarch received a personal visit from Yi-sun on the second night. No one knew exactly what happened during that meeting, but the Mortys never bothered Yi-sun again. When Yi-sun finally returned to the penthouse, exhausted and covered in bruises, Nadia was waiting for him. "Is it over?" she asked. "It is over." She wrapped her arms around him. They stood together in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sun rise over Manhattan. "I meant what I said on the phone," Nadia murmured against his chest. "I love you." Yi-sun pulled back just enough to look at her face. His eyes were soft, vulnerable, full of an emotion that would have been impossible to imagine 3 months ago. "Marry me," he said. Nadia blinked. "What?" "Marry me." He took her hands. "I do not have a ring yet. I do not have a plan. All I have is this. I almost lost you tonight. And when I thought you might be gone, I realized that nothing else matters. Not my business, not my power, not my money, only you." Nadia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "You are insane." "Probably. We have only been together for 2 weeks. I have loved you for 3 months." She looked at this man. This dangerous, damaged, beautiful man who had burned down his entire world to keep her safe. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." Yi-sun kissed her as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. He kissed her like she was the only thing worth living for. Because to him she was. 6 months later, the graduation ceremony at Columbia Business School was held on a beautiful May afternoon. The sun was shining. The sky was blue. The air smelled like flowers and new beginnings. Nadia walked across the stage in her cap and gown. When her name was called, she heard cheering from the audience. She looked out and saw Yi-sun in the front row, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. He was standing, clapping, looking at her like she had just conquered the world. Because to him, she had. Afterward, they celebrated with champagne and dinner at the best restaurant in Manhattan. Yi-sun had rented out the entire venue so they could be alone. "I have something to tell you," Nadia said over dessert. Yi-sun's expression grew concerned. "Is everything okay?" She smiled. "Everything is perfect. I got a job offer today." "Already?" "It is a consulting position with a nonprofit that helps inner-city kids in Chicago get access to higher education." Her eyes were shining. "I would be working with kids like me, kids who have talent and potential but no resources. Kids who just need someone to believe in them." Yi-sun reached across the table and took her hand. "That sounds exactly like what you were meant to do." "There is more." Nadia bit her lip. "The organization is called the Gloria Brooks Foundation." Yi-sun went still. "Gloria Brooks, your mother's name." "You established it 6 weeks ago, a $50 million endowment in her name." Nadia's voice was thick with emotion. "Why did you not tell me?" "I wanted it to be a surprise." He squeezed her hand. "Your mother sacrificed everything for you. This is a way for her legacy to help other children who need it." Nadia started crying, happy tears, grateful tears. She got up from her seat and walked around the table to kiss him. "I do not deserve you," she whispered. "You deserve everything, and I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." Their wedding was held on a rooftop in Brooklyn, 6 months after the proposal. It was small, intimate, only 50 guests, close friends and family members who had earned their trust. Nadia wore a stunning white gown that made her look like an angel. Yi-sun wore an all-black suit that made him look like the beautiful danger he was. The ceremony was simple but emotional. They wrote their own vows. Nadia went first. "Yi-sun, I came to you with nothing. No money, no family, no hope. You gave me a job that saved my life. But more than that, you gave me yourself. You showed me the man behind the reputation, the broken heart behind the walls. I fell in love with every piece of you, even the pieces you tried to hide. I promised to spend the rest of my life loving you, healing you, fighting for you, the way you fight for me." Then it was Yi-sun's turn. "Nadia, I spent 5 years believing I was incapable of love. I convinced myself that my heart was dead, that I would never feel anything except emptiness. Then you walked through my door. You challenged me, frustrated me, made me feel things I had buried so deep I forgot they existed. You did not save me. You reminded me that I was worth saving. I promised to protect you, provide for you, love you with everything I have, until my last breath and beyond." When they kissed, the sun was setting over the Manhattan skyline. The same skyline they had stared at together so many times before. "I love you," Nadia whispered against his lips. "I love you more," Yi-sun whispered back. "Impossible." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that she had worked so hard to earn. "We will spend the rest of our lives figuring out who loves who more." "I can live with that." The reception was filled with laughter and dancing and champagne toasts. Nadia danced with Yi-sun's men, who looked deeply uncomfortable in their suits but refused to say no to the bride. Yi-sun watched her with eyes full of wonder. At the end of the night, they stood alone on the rooftop. Everyone